I have covered beta and cut Pokemon content a lot on this channel, because to me, it's one of the coolest parts about the franchise. As such, I have covered everything we currently know pretty extensively, but there have been some loose ends I haven't touched on that we are going to highlight today. In particular, it has to do with the beta designs of some Pokemon that did actually make the final games, and how those designs are downright weird, strange, terrifying, or otherwise unusual looking. It really goes to show how much a Pokemon design can go through before it becomes a finished product, so let's cut the chatter and just get right into it. So getting into the beta stuff now, two Pokemon that do a really good job of illustrating these terrifying and weird descriptors are these early versions of Sneasel and Politoed. Both coming out of the recent Gold and Silver beta leaks, they show a completely different vision for these Pokemon that rests a little more on the unsettling side of things. Starting with this beta Sneasel, it honestly looks more like some kind of demon or actual monster than it does a Pokemon, and notably, its head is actually pretty similar in shape to Sonic the Hedgehog's, particularly with the spikes at the back, so that's kinda cool, I guess. We did also receive another early design of Sneasel via the 1997 Space World demo of Gold and Silver, where it pretty much is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, with a much tamer design that's a lot more vanilla, if you will, and as you can see, Final Sneasel sort of ended up in the middle of these two concepts. It is pretty crazy that two completely different approaches were taken for the same Pokemon, with this one in particular being fairly unnerving. Moving along to this early design of Politoed, it too is very different to the final result we were ultimately introduced to in the Johto games. Final Politoed is an extremely jolly, lovable Pokemon with lots of friendly personality, whereas this beta design from Gold and Silver's earlier days is completely devoid of any of that jolly nature. Its eyes are almost lifeless even, with a very blank stare on its face, and it seems like it'd be ready to take you out at any moment. In fact, it seems like this version of Politoed could possibly even be fighting type, which is interesting considering that its counterpart, Poliwrath, is also fighting type, so it's almost like this Politoed is a Johto variant of this line, considering it also looks ninja or assassin inspired, which would fit with Johto being inspired by historical Japan. Just like Sneasel, it's crazy how Politoed's beta and final designs are so different to one another, and how two very different approaches were tried for the same Pokemon. Personally though, I'm really glad they went with the friendly design as opposed to the one that looks like it wants to kill me. Speaking of things that look like they want to kill you, this beta design of Gligar matches that vibe perfectly. Also coming from the aforementioned leaks, this design is interesting because it very much looks like the final Gligar, just in a much more sinister form. It's almost like they took this design and just Pokemonified it to get the look of Gligar's final design. Many people are also probably unaware that Gligar is based on the Facehugger from the Alien franchise, which this beta design also lines up more closely to as well. And, well, yeah, Facehuggers definitely fall into the terrifying category, so I'm glad they toned that down for Gligar's final look. More leaked Johto Pokemon with interesting early appearances also include Hoothoot and Mantine. Why don't we start with Mantine, because how could you possibly ignore that face? The rest of Mantine's design is pretty much the same here, but my goodness, Mantine looks like it has seen some stuff. In fact, this isn't even the only design of Mantine with a horrifying look on its face, because we also have this version as well, and it is kinda creepy to put it lightly. Meanwhile, this beta version of Hoothoot has its eyes opened wider than even its final design, which I didn't know was possible. However, this early design isn't even bad, it's just different, and with Hoothoot having another more well-known beta design in addition to this one, it's cool that it is another Pokemon that went through several design iterations before landing on its final look. This next section is going to be kind of a speed round because I've already talked about these beta designs in other videos, but they are the very definition of weird and strange, so I couldn't not mention them. First up, we have Celebi, who looked much different and was actually normal type at this stage instead of Grass Psychic. And then we have Beta Arceus, Giratina, and Rotom from the leak of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl's beta. These are extremely strange because they're very clearly unfinished and not intended to be final designs of these Pokemon, but they're also distinct and unique enough that they had to be thinking something very different for these Pokemon originally, before landing on their final designs. I mean, what even is Giratina here? These designs are truly something else, hence why I had to bring them up here. Picking back up where we left off with the leaked Johtomons, we have this. Before I tell you who this is, go ahead and see if you can guess. Any ideas? Well, if you're stumped, this is an early version of Wobbuffet, believe it or not. It retains the blobbiness that final Wobbuffet has, but is different in just about every other way, and similar to some of the other Pokemon on this list, shows a very different direction for this Pokemon. So much so that it's pretty incredible that the design process over at Game Freak can morph something like this into this. Since we had fun looking at weird faces earlier, how about we look at some more? Similar to Mantine from before, these early designs of Heracross, Fortress, and Sunkern have most of their final design intact, with the one exception being their face, all of which are rather strange. Looking at Fortress first, it actually has two slight variations to its face in this beta design, which actually give it a mouth, which cannot be seen in the final product, and while not being inherently weird, it is somewhat funny to see Fortress with such a different expression. Next up is Sunkern, and come on, what is up with those eyes? I don't even know if I can really consider this an actual beta design. Maybe the developers were just having a bit of fun or something, because there's no real way that Sunkern actually looked like this at one point, is there? The rest of its design is just like the final as well, so I don't know, man. Whether this was actually legit or just some sprite artist at Game Freak having fun, it's pretty hilarious either way. Finally, we have Heracross, and its beta face is something else, and not in a good way. Its eyes are much smaller and much more creepy here, and it's a lot more just weird. It looks like they were going for the much more straightforward bug look here, which doesn't really translate that well into a stylized series like Pokemon. Thankfully they changed it, otherwise Heracross would have been much creepier. Two more Pokemon remain on this list, the first of which is this early Blissey design. Uncovered from the recent Gold and Silver beta leaks, as usual, this design is not one of the weirder ones on this list, but it does seem kinda strange to see Blissey look like this. It was definitely much more straightforward with the whole caretaker look here, so I think it was good that it eventually toned down some of those features and allowed them to blend in a lot more naturally in its final design. And lastly, we have Slugma, who looked like this at an earlier point in Gold and Silver's development. This one is funny because Slugma does look fairly different here, but the only real difference between it and its final design is that here it doesn't have the flame shapes around the top of its eyes. So it's funny that such a small change to the design results in Slugma having so much more of a funny look to it. So there you have it. What do you think? Have you been scarred for life by some of these early Pokemon designs? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. It really helps out a lot. With that said, I will see you all soon with another video, and until then, as always, I love you all, and I will smell you guys later.